Greetings, I'm Solidus-Skully, and welcome to the Resident Evil 0 commentary. Yeah, for those of you wondering, I was initially planning on doing the 2002 remake, but since we've already seen a Resident Evil 1 sort of thing, I figured it's best that we go back to the beginning. That is to say, the prequel to the beginning that was actually the last game in the Tank Controls era, and is also sort of a weird mishmash of games that came after the first one, but before the future ones. It's a weird thing to talk about, but Resident Evil 0. Just gonna go through a few options before we begin, but yes. Released in 2002 in Japan, same year as the remake, and, well, yeah, to lay my cards firmly on the table right now, I don't want this to turn into another Ratchet Deadlocks kind of situation where I say that I like the game despite the fact that I have many criticisms of it, but yeah, I do have problems with Resident Evil 0, but I want to stress that I don't think it's bad, necessarily. But, you know, it's got its good points, but it also has its negative points. And yes, I'm playing on easy mode. Oh dear god, the shame, but I don't care.
A Midwestern town in America, Raccoon City. A solitary island far off in the sea, Rockfort Island. An island that would become the second Raccoon City, Sheena Island. There are still many unanswered questions about these seemingly unrelated yet intensely traumatic events. Though it is believed that the international enterprise umbrella was somehow involved, little is known as to the origin of this faceless corporation. When was it established? By whom? And how was the T-virus created? To uncover the truth, we must delve deeper into the events which transpired in the beginning, before the mansion incident.
Really?
Do you think so too?
Yeah.
Do about it.
Should hold off for a while.
But I wonder how those R&D people would react to this.
Began as a simple investigation of some bizarre murders in the suburbs of Raccoon City. Nothing in our training could ever have prepared us for the nightmare that ensued. We never stood a chance.
What's going on? Engine failure. Emergency landing.
Check the current position and investigate the surrounding area.
Captain, look! Captain!
What happened?
Court order for transportation. Prisoner Billy Cohen, ex-lieutenant, 26 years old. Court-martialed and sentenced to death July 22nd. Prisoner is to be transferred to the Regathon base for execution.
Those poor soldiers.
They were good men just doing their jobs, and that scum murdered them and escaped.
All right, everyone, let's separate and survey the area. Our friend is brutal and ruthless. Keep your guard up.
A train.
Yeah, that's right, Rebecca. Don't tell anybody where you're going or, keep in radio contact despite the fact that, there's a serial killer going around. Nothing important there, I suppose. But yeah, we can't leave and, reunite with our team because, gotta get the plot moving and give Rebecca a reason to do a thing. But yeah, before we move on, it's time to talk about unlockable costumes, which, in the case of the 2016 re-release of Resident Evil 0, well, first of all, this is pretty much Rebecca's character-specific gimmick that she can mix, chemicals together. More of a plot thing, not necessarily to do with, and you know what, I'll get into that a little bit later, but, yeah. Unlockable outfits. We're pretty much only going to be showing off two specifically, but I figured I might as well just go across them in the menu. And it also handily tells you which games they came from, which is, quite nice. But yeah, the only two I'm going to be using for this playthrough specifically is S.T.A.R.S 1996, and of course the sportswear, which is basically Rebecca's sporty little basketball outfit that you saw in Resident Evil 2. But anyway, that's neither here nor there in this case. So yeah, Rebecca, basketball medic extraordinaire, was riding a train one day until she ran into a zombie apocalypse and fell into the nightmare that is to come. But yeah, Resident Evil 0 began development in the year 2000 for the Nintendo 64, and, well, basically after fuckery that I'll talk about a little bit later in terms of development history, shifted gears towards the GameCube, and I take it ended up reusing, like, a lot of the Resident Evil 2002 remake's assets, because again, in terms of look and feel, this is pretty much one-for-one the 2002 Resident Evil remake in terms of its visual aesthetic. And, yeah, I am going to be talking over this because this is pretty much our first introduction to the zombie. And I suppose I should also go into it. Because, yeah, this game also uses a lot of pre-rendered cutscenes, so despite wearing Rebecca's sporty outfit, yeah, CG renders also pretty much use the, well, CG models. But yeah, now we also have our typical, oh no, here's a zombie, here's some more zombies, and, if I could kind of critique the design, at least of the train area first and foremost, not so much on easy mode, which I'll get into in a little bit, but yeah, zombies flooding the halls, and whereas in regular Resident Evil games you could usually navigate around them no problem, yeah, apparently Rebecca doesn't have the bright idea to just climb over the fucking seats. So yeah, navigation is a bit balls, and I guess the reason why I'm playing on easy mode, oh, to the shame, except I don't really give a fuck, because Resident Evil 0, I'd say, out of all the classic series games, is probably the hardest. And some of that is for rather poor design decisions in my eyes, another of which is, I think, legitimately down to the fact that it is putting your, Resident Evil skills to the test. It harkens back to the design of Resident Evil 1 as opposed to 2 and 3, which were more action-focused, and, yeah, you do really feel that on normal and hard mode, where your resources are quite limited. You do have to share between two specific characters, as is this game's central gimmick, although we'll get into that a little bit later in part 2. And, yeah, I mean, for those of you wanting, like, a more tried-and-true survival horror experience where you're literally fumbling in the darkness, yeah, Resident Evil 0 does have you covered in that aspect, so I guess in that sense it does bring back a lot of the horror elements, but by that same token, though, it does also come with a very specific caveat that will make or break the game for you. Oh, and by the way, if you want to read these texts, I advise that you pause it, because a lot of this is also going into the backstory of, well, again, as the intro cutscene entailed, it's also going into the backstory of not only one facet of the Umbrella Corporation, but also with a couple of recurring characters that, well, would be heavily involved in Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, 5, retconned in 4 because of that secret mission. Yeah, we're gonna be getting, well, we don't get as much about the origins of the Umbrella Corporation as I would have liked. In fact, if nothing else, I think Resident Evil 5 actually does a better job at delving into that than, Zero does. But again, we do get some nice tidbits of information here and there. So, yeah, it's not all for naught, really. I mean, as a prequel game, I would say that Resident Evil 0 was one that you can't entirely skip, but at the same time, though, it is also one where, again, if you wanted to jump from, like, Resident Evil, like, Code Veronica through to 4, 5, or 6, you won't be too lost in terms of plotting, I guess. But anyway, we have our locked doors, and, seems that this guy is dead. Who could have moided him? Could it have been that, what's-his-face, Billy Cohen, or, Cohen Billy's?
Billy. Lieutenant Cohen.
So, you seem to know me. Been fantasizing about me, have you?
You're the prisoner that was being transferred for execution. You were with those soldiers outside.
Oh, I see. You're with S.T.A.R.S. Well, no offense, honey, but your kind doesn't seem to want me around, so I'm afraid our little chat time is over.
Wait! You're under arrest!
No thanks, Dollface. I've already worn handcuffs.
I could shoot, you know. Edward! Are you alright? What happened?
It's worse than... We can't. You must be careful, Rebecca. The forest is full of zombies and monsters.
Zombies and monsters?
Dearie me, zombie dogs. At this time of the game. Resident Evil 0 ain't fucking around. But yeah, I mean, if you've ever played a classic Resident Evil game before, pretty much the same rules apply. Tank controls, limited ammo and inventory. You have your basic health system, heal out by using herbs, first aid sprays, ink ribbons to save. So again, very basic stuff. I probably don't need to explain it unless you've never seen the other Resident Evil commentaries I've done, so yeah, nothing new to explore. I guess there is the thing of Bravo Team, actually. We don't really get to meet many of their membership, mainly because a lot of them die in Resident Evil 1, but yeah, that was Edward right over there. Also, fun fact, his hand is the thing that Joseph finds in Resident Evil 1. You know, when he was like, hey, over here, leg gasp, oh no, zombie dogs, I am dead, blurg. So, yeah, that's pretty much all we get to learn about him. Rest in peace, Edward, we hardly knew ye. But yes, anyway, it seems that, William Barkin, what a familiar sounding name. But yeah, since this does take place before the first Resident Evil game, and indeed a little bit before 2, yeah, we're going to be getting a lot of backstory on, well, not only how the T-Virus first came into being, but also some, unique spins on it, and, well, basically how things were sort of set up, really. But yeah, I guess if I could also somewhat justify my playing on easy modes, even if, you know, slightly, it's that while I would agree that easy mode is inversely too easy, at the same time, though, like, when you're playing on normal mode, I don't know, like, I mean, easy mode floods you with supplies and, you know, at least gives you a decent enough buffer of health to at least withstand whatever comes your way, but at the same time, though, it also feels like when you're playing on the normal and hard mode, there's a very specific way in which you're meant to play Resident Evil 0, which, I don't know, is a little bit confronting to me. It's not something I can say right now because we haven't quite gotten to the specific gameplay gimmick just yet, but I don't know, it's something that I just kind of find to be a bit of a it's a bit of a hurdle that I find somewhat difficult to jump at times when it comes to replaying Resident Evil 0, which, as a game, I can only really say that I've ever done like a handful of times. By which I mean about like 2 or 3. First of which was for the test playthrough, the other was my first playthrough, and then it's for this recording session. And I suppose as you could probably somewhat tell by my stumbling and hesitance, yeah, I don't play this game very often, and well, I mean, at the same time, while I do love this game for its atmosphere and the fact that, again, it is one that gives Rebecca a starring role in which she's had very limited screen time, yeah, gameplay is, pretty much the hurdle I'm talking about here. And again, it's nothing too bad first up, it's just that when the game begins to escalate, you really start to feel the pinch. But in the meantime, we're also in one of the more unique settings of a Resident Evil game, and I suppose, quite possibly the most iconic thing of Resident Evil 0, the train segment. Which is weird for how brief it is, because I mean, most Resident Evil games usually start in like a sort of mansion or facility kind of area, but no, we start in a train. Rather unique, and I don't know, I will say that it is a quite cool set piece, although its design does lead itself to some rather limited... Well, again, I mentioned this beforehand, but again, its rather narrow corridors means that you can't dodge zombies in the same way that you could have in hallways of the mansion or previous Resident Evil games, but, yeah. It also gradually introduces gimmicks, like those, eggs right there, and you can't destroy them ahead of time, so there isn't any sort of, like, phantom baby mechanic where you can squash spiders or anything. No, you're gonna have to deal with that gimmick, and it's gonna be a pain in the butt. But anyway, now that we got the key to the dining car, we can finally move on to greener pastures. But wait, there's a message coming through.
This is Rebecca. Over.
Rebecca, can you hear me? This is Rico. What's your location? Over.
Enrico! Hello! Can you read me? Please respond.
Rebecca, I can hear you. Now listen up. We've obtained detailed information on the fugitive from a document found in the wrecked wagon. Billy Cohen killed as many as 23 people. Over.
23 people.
We have also confirmed that he was institutionalized, so keep your guard up. Can you hear me, Rebecca? Over. Stay alert, Rebecca. He wouldn't think twice before killing you.
Enrico! Captain! Hello? Hello!
Oh no, Billy's dangerous! And yeah, we'll talk about Billy Cohen as we get on into the game, when we finally, you know, get to have him as our dear budding friend, because when you're in a zombie apocalypse, yeah, morality kind of goes out the window, and, well, yeah, let's just say you're not really in a fit position to judge people when it comes to killing people, because, well, you know how it is. Zombies ain't peoples no more, so murder is perfectly nice and legal. Oh yeah, we don't need these keys anymore. Discard it. Anyway, speaking of Billy Cohen, let's see what he's up to.
It's gonna be dangerous from here on in. Why don't we cooperate?
Cooperate with you?
Listen, little girl, if you haven't noticed, there's some pretty freaked out things on this train. And I, for one, want to get out of here. I don't think we stand a chance doing it alone.
You expect me to trust you, a wanted felon? I don't need your help. I can handle this on my own. And don't call me little girl.
All right, Miss Do-It-Yourself. What should I call you?
The name is Rebecca Chambers, but that's Officer Chambers to you.
Well then, Rebecca, why don't you go and try while I wait here?
Yeah, if you decide to talk to Billy again at this point, he'll pretty much just repeat the same thing he said there, but, yeah, it's shortly after this point where Rebecca begins to reprioritize her priorities, obviously, and, yeah, that pretty much brings us to the end of the part. Stunning beginning, but, yeah, it does kind of bring in the unsettling atmosphere, the creepy tones, the hush-hush, the chutzpah, if you will. But yeah, as soon as we take a rise up to the dining car, well, dining car? Yeah, I would say that. that we saw at the beginning of the game with all the people eating dinner before being ravaged by monstrous leeches? Yeah, it seems that Rebecca might be in for a little surprise. So I'm Solidus-Skully, keep a new metal, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Excuse me, sir. Sir.
For the final letter you came here for. The one derivative you manage is the one I abhor. I need a minute to eliminate forever what the everyday bullshit that I did you out on. Your impossible ego fuck is like a megalomaniacal jab on my jaw. You fucking touch me, I will rip you apart. I'll reach in and take a bite out of that shit you got.